Hi, good afternoon, and welcome to another episode of the Takeaways podcast. On today's episode, I'm with Tim Treagus. He's the co-founder and the CEO of Yazi. He's going to tell us more about what they do. Good afternoon, man, and welcome to the podcast. How are you doing, Tim?
Great, thanks. Nice to be here.
100%. So I want to start with you, right? So please share more on what Yazi is and how you came up with the idea and how the building of it is going so far.
Great. So Yazi started in 2022, and the original story is around me working for another company, doing lots of early stage research and idea validation for different corporate companies in South Africa. And at the time, I was trying to validate different ideas so that the corporate could then assess and understand and validate if these concepts would actually work in the market, i.e. we wanted to gauge if there was demand for these products and ideas. And all of them, interestingly, were targeted at the informal sector, and all of them needed to get consumers to actually confirm or deny what hypotheses and assumptions we had already. And in the process of doing that validation and research work, I discovered how incredibly difficult and tedious it was to reach this side of the market, particularly informal in South Africa, where the traditional digital research tooling definitely doesn't accommodate or allow for reasonable, feasible access to this sort of segment. And so what that allowed me to recognize was that WhatsApp was a much more suitable channel to this sort of people group because it is so readily accessible and available and on people's phones already. And the key numbers that drove that assumption or the validation of that was 96% of the internet population in South Africa has WhatsApp, which is essentially saying that if you have a phone, you've got WhatsApp, which means that you are accessible. And the counter or the alternative is for a big research brand or big bank to send emails with links with a survey on it. And obviously that approach excludes a ton of people because not many people have email in this country, or they may have email but not have it accessible or not want to respond and click on links. So that kicked off the journey to use WhatsApp as this research mechanism. And the core thesis, as I've described, was that we could reach more people from an accessibility point of view, and that WhatsApp would have a much higher response rate, much higher engagement rate, which ultimately means that the data is more accurate. Because if you have a sample of people that do not represent the broader population that you're trying to understand, you cannot inference or predict anything to do with that population because you do not have an accurate read on all the different people groups with the relevant quotas. So WhatsApp actually is a fantastic tool for getting more accurate and representative data. And so that has now spun into Yazi today, where we have a research platform with three core methodologies: a survey tool, an AI moderated interview, and a diary study, or a recurring set of questions that would allow a brand or a research company to capture data longitudinally with the consumer as they go about their life over days and weeks. And we have a panel or a research qualified and profiled database of 1.8 million people around the world. But we also help brands understand their own customers, where they would bring them to us and use our software to better understand and get insights from their own customers.
Before we get into the nitty-gritties of the product itself, I want to talk about you. Prior to Yazi, you founded an e-commerce startup, I believe. Can you just share more on how that experience it cascaded into you then being able to to run Yazi?
I think when you start a business, you will either gravitate towards it or away. And for me, it was a huge unlock in what I'd always desired, but didn't know it was quite inside me. And so I think the journey of starting Billo in second year at university at UCT was a really important one, because it allowed me to see that as an individual in university, you can actually build something. You can go through the process of creating things that no one else around you is doing. And a lot of those misconceptions that you have around what is possible start to break away. And as soon as you break out of the norm and your mindset changes around what's possible, it starts to reformulate the way you see yourself in your career and what you can do. And from that moment, it was very clear that I would be an entrepreneur. It was just then a matter of what and when. And the Billo journey was an exciting one, and it's quite an interesting one. So the the founding story goes as follows. A very, very good friend of mine, Emma, came to me one day and said, Tim, I'm starting this business and I want you to be my co-founder. The business is a beach pillow. It's made of wetsuit material, which means it's waterproof. You go to the beach, you want something to lie down. It's a fantastic solution to putting your wet hair on something instead of having to roll up your clothes or make a mound of sand into a pillow or put your head on your bag, because this is actually built for the weather elements, and it's got a pocket on the inside so you can keep your phone and your wallet safe. And I said, well, I'm in. And that very good friend of mine ended up becoming my wife. So that journey was an exciting one from a romantic point of view. It then went on to be an interesting period of figuring out e-commerce and entrepreneurship and discovering all of the different areas that are needed to build a business, like getting an import license and setting up tax and setting up an online store and learning to do distribution and social media marketing and getting the product built and made first in South Africa, but finding that the manufacturers couldn't do it. So then getting it made in China using Alibaba and finding it, different manufacturers through the marketplace there. All of these were really hard processes at the time and were not something that I would have been able to think that I would be able to do. And in the end, once you conquer it, again, it unlocks your mindset around what you can do. I decided not to go into retail. I think that was a big decision of mine, is that I wasn't actually feeling that stimulated in that space. And I actually really wanted to be in tech, although I'd studied finance. So it was an unusual desire of mine because there wasn't much around me that was pulling me towards it, except this weird internal desire. So then from there, I moved to a company called The Delta, which at its core is a company that builds companies. It's morphed and changed many times over since then. But what I got as an opportunity at The Delta was amazing, because I was in a very small team. I was the sort of 23rd person. I worked directly under Louis, the CEO, and had a lot of opportunity to grow and take on a lot of responsibility, more so than I think many graduates would be able to get. So that compounding, or that opportunity to really step into spaces boldly, definitely helped me to get where I am now with Yazi.
I want to go back to Yazi. So just so that I understand the model of the business properly, it's a B2B2C, right? In that you run the research for clients who have businesses, right? Correct?
Correct. I think there's two sides to it, or there's obviously often a spectrum. So the one side is pure software, where companies will use us as they would have perhaps used SurveyMonkey, Google Forms, Typeform. Imagine that sort of interface where you're scripting a survey on a tool and then distributing it via WhatsApp. You don't then distribute the survey via email. You would distribute it via WhatsApp, and then the participant gets to complete the entire survey, questionnaire, AI interview, or diary study inside of WhatsApp end to end. And obviously that accommodates for things like voice notes and videos and pictures, and a very qualitative, immersive experience, which is much like a conversation you would have with your friend, compared to, say, a Typeform or Google Forms, where, yes, it's possible to receive that kind of media, but it's unlikely that people want to share it in that manner on their browser. It's also a lot more data from a mobile data cost point of view, and the ability in WhatsApp for you to come back and complete at a later point means that we have much higher engagement and completion rates. So you can have this questionnaire, survey, diary study running for multiple days and push people to complete it over a period of days, which is very unique. And there's a lot of unique factors that WhatsApp enables that a normal browser-based approach doesn't. And we play into those different propositions and then offer companies and customers a sort of a portal into their customers in a way that is very hard to achieve digitally or at scale normally. So yeah, we work like that, and that's the software side, right? On the other side, with the case where we provide the participants, we have that big database. We've got access to people in every continent, predominantly Africa, but we do studies in every continent pretty much every month. So we're very global right now, and the client will either use us in a more self-service manner where they'll write the questions and just get us to connect to the audience, or we will do the full project end to end for them. And then in that case, we're playing a bit more on the agency side, where we will actually deliver the services, do the reports, advise on the insights and the recommendations. And that's I think in this world of AI, that actually is quite a strategic and slightly defensive move to do, because software isn't as defensible as it used to be, and having those deep relationships with our clients and teaching them how to wield the capability and learning or teaching them how to get the best out of the actual data means that they then trust us. They also don't have to do as much work, and therefore feel like they're getting more than just a tech capability and data. They're actually getting assistance in helping them grow their business. And in that case, then they make the buy decision because of the tech, but also because of the people on the Yazi front.
I'm interested, like, in the clients that you guys serve. Can you share more, like, on what kind of businesses you use, like, your services?
Yeah, so we serve clients globally. In Q1, 60% of our revenue was outside of South Africa, but we have still a lot more South African clients. So we have some of the big financial services clients in South Africa, like Capitec, Discovery, Old Mutual. We're onboarding with a few more. We do work with Pick n Pay. We're also doing work now with Uber. We then also, on the agency side, work with all of the biggest agencies in South Africa. So that's like a company like Ipsos, and we do work with other agencies across the world as well. And these are like the experts, research practitioners that have or work for a services company in a market where they would generally serve the big brands themselves. And in that case, they use us as a tool or as an input to deliver the research work that their client has asked them to do. And that's a really great client for us because they do a lot of work and they're very good at using the software. They're very tuned in to knowing what's out there, how to use it. And so we can allow them to be left to their own devices quite easily. Whereas some of the other clients, we would like to assist them more because they might not have the experience. And in that case, it just means we aren't necessarily able to scale as efficiently, but it's still a great place to be because we go deep with those clients and we really help them and make sure that they're getting the best out of the research and the tool.
So the advantages of the WhatsApp as a research platform are quite like clear, right? Like in terms of scale, etc., etc. But at the end of the day, it's still a platform that's owned by like another company. Aren't you concerned that then like your growth, like in your operations, are kind of like based on whatever decisions are taken by Meta on the platform?
Yeah, I mean, there's always risks in business, and that is a risk that I started with the knowledge of. It's something that we always look at and assess. If WhatsApp had to shut down, there will be a dominant messaging channel that will take over, and our software will be able to be plugged into those APIs. So it is not likely to be purely catastrophic, as we will be able to push into a different service. Like to move into Telegram, for example, is very straightforward. In fact, it's actually more simple. There are new messaging frameworks that have come out that we also are looking at building into and alongside. But in any case, right now, there's no need to think like that because it's working. And there is a risk that Meta does something to do with, say, data privacy. There's a big leak and everyone jumps ship. But at this point, it doesn't appear that is going to happen. It's not in their interest to do that. And actually, from a research standpoint, their end-to-end encryption is the best in research grade across the globe. There's not a single research company that has end-to-end encryption like WhatsApp. So we are actually quite confident and often feel like WhatsApp is misunderstood and misdiagnosed as being like an inappropriate tool for research, when in fact it's actually a brilliant one. It's the most effective and most secure out of any sort of protocol that you could build yourself. I think also to come at it from the other side, if you look at Amazon or Airbnb or Meta ads or things like that, where there's other platforms where businesses have been built on the back of these different companies, be it AWS or Amazon Marketplace. There are many $100 million to $500 million companies that are built specifically for those. And Airbnb may change the regulation in a particular country, and then that platform that helps with Airbnb listings and booking management, that maybe will be in trouble. But right now, that those companies have had a good run and they've racked up big revenue scores. So I think we know there's risk, but we're bullish on where WhatsApp's going, and we think that it's the right bet.
You raised your first round, I believe you announced it in March. Can you just share more on what your pitch was, like in terms of the growth of the platform, like in terms of the potential for growth, and how the entire process of trying to raise was? Because I mean, over the years, I think the fundraising environment has been pretty tough, right? So can you share more on how that process was?
I will be transparent and say that for the last 4 years, every year, there's been one or two moments where I thought we are going to close the round. So it's been a long journey to get to this point, and I can share to that experience a bit as well. In the end, ultimately, we met the right team, and there was some serendipity to the way that we met them and some of the other stakeholders involved. But the core of it was that Z and I knew what we were doing because we'd been doing it for 4 years, and we didn't really know what we were doing for the years prior. So we are confident that we can do what we said we would set out to do, and that isn't always true when you are 25, 26 years old, right? So you do learn. So number one, I believe in us as founders, and I think we actually have learned to get really good at what we do and hone our craft. Number two, we had the right metrics. We didn't have much revenue before, and we didn't have growing revenue. And at the moment when we raised, we have been growing, and we've got big enterprise contracts coming in and things, and we actually had the metrics and the evidence to support that this is now something that you can see with numbers that it's working and it's going to get bigger. And then number three, the macro and the thesis around the bet for a VC. We always say, and I always say, that in 5 years' time, 1 in 5 emerging market companies that does research will have WhatsApp as a research channel. Not to say that they will have it as the only channel, but in the same way that customer support has evolved and changed over the years, the same is true for research. And we believe that every company serving consumers in emerging markets is going to want to have WhatsApp as a mechanism to reach out for different kinds of feedback and engagement flows. So we see ourselves as the winner if that is true. And we are currently the best and number one research platform in the world. It's not even a question. There are a few others, but we have built specifically around WhatsApp. And so know that the way we have designed our solution in terms of accommodating for all of the features that WhatsApp has is like heads and shoulders above everyone else. And so with that, I think it was easier for the VC to then make that decision to bet on us because of those sort of three things. The market's good, the team is good, and there's evidence that they're growing and that it's actually going well. I think you learn how to present and pitch that. And in the last 4 years, I would say that is an area that I have understood how to learn to communicate better and better, and what is actually compelling versus what's like in your head, and what are you thinking about isn't necessarily what they want to hear. You have to learn to select the information that is relevant for the VC and then portray it in the way that is exciting to them, and they need to be exciting. And I think that's another thing that Z and I do together, particularly when we're on a call, is we are excited and we believe in this, and we really do believe in it because we, as I said, we think WhatsApp is better for research in many instances than the status quo. Therefore, there's going to be a shift, right? If that is true and people catch on to that, we are going to be big winners in the space, and the whole pie is going to grow. So the journey with the VC took a few months. I think it took longer than we anticipated because we increased the amounts, and the amounts are, we haven't disclosed publicly just because there's a second tranche, and it varies depending on our 2026 performance. But we ended up pricing the round at this early tranche and then at the second tranche, and that is maybe counterintuitive to most people raising like seed stage or early stage.
Yeah, because like usually like in a press release, I get the amount raised, I don't get the valuation. So you guys, you did it the other way around, and like you stated the valuation.
To be honest, we didn't give the valuation. There was just one journalist who was WhatsApping us frantically, and in the end we told them, and then it just got out. So that's how it goes sometimes. I think you learn how to manage the PR story a bit better as you get older. I mean, I don't mind. I think I think transparency in an African context is so helpful because founders are just clueless as to like how it works, who's doing what, So if there's some leakage and it helps people understand, what a reference point is, then I'm glad. I'm glad that they can lean on that as a data point to know how they can construct a conversation with another VC.
Are you able to share more, like in terms of the figures for the growth? Are you able to share more on or how you guys have grown, like in terms of the user base, like in terms of the performance of the business, like in terms of the growth rate?
I think to date we've grown 3x as of this month. So the preceding 12 months. Our target for the year is to grow 3x as well. We expect to grow actually a lot more in 27, as a lot of these research contracts, they get renewed when the budget gets renewed. And so these sales cycles and budgets are something that you sort of have to navigate. And so we've got a lot of smaller clients that come in and do work, but they aren't necessarily going to pay the big bucks. And so a lot of the sort of enterprise contracts that are coming through now will probably only materialize significantly in 2027. This year has been about the product, and we as a team, and me particularly, are obsessed with the product, and we believe in building an exceptional product in terms of experience. And we wouldn't have this view and conviction if we were just serving South Africa, but because we have clients everywhere, we compete daily against all the tools and teams in Silicon Valley, which means that the threshold for what quality and what like good enough is actually very high. And with that, it means we need to be very dialed into building an exceptional experience. So I spend a lot of time on the product, and Z spends a lot of time on the product. All of us actually have access to building on the product, and we make sure that the experience is exceptional and that gets better every day. In terms of outlook, we are targeting the UK as a primary market to grow into. We like the UK because the price point is a bit better than local. The buyer is actually quite sophisticated in terms of using software, and this is just an unfortunate one that often we find the emerging market buyers aren't actually able to self-service as well. So then we end up spending a lot more time assisting and helping them. So the sort of a British buyer is actually more self-service and able to kind of proactively move forward a bit quicker. And then the time zone works well. And the UK does a lot of international and global research. So they do lots of research in India and Brazil and things. So that's all the strategy and thinking around it.
I'm interested now, like in the growth of a product. I mean, research has like this challenge in that even when you get like a client, they might pay for like one research product, but like in VC, ARR is so important, in that like you have to have an ability to get, that recurring revenue. Are you planning to perhaps build out, like a subscription product?
Definitely. And it is the topic of the moment for us right now. This is how we think about recurring and how we think about commercials for clients where actually in reality they don't do research every month. So how do we fit our commercial around their needs and desires and make it feasible for them? So we target companies that do regular research, and that's why the agencies are very good. On the brand side, we would accommodate for what we would more term as customer experience, or for short CX, or another term would be voice of the customer. And this sort of research is actually developed as a once-off integration or setup that then runs longitudinally or over time. So a very simple and generic example of a voice of the customer flow would be post interaction with a call center, you'll be asked to share feedback. Now that's pretty normal and standard, and we're unlikely to be a winner in that space. But where we are likely to be a winner is when we build dynamic and sophisticated triggers that look at the data that the company or our customer has around their customer, and then build triggers on top of that. For example, if there's a drop in transaction volume, then we will send a message to you to say, hey, it seems like you've stopped using the services as much. Could you share why? Or if there's something big that happens, or if you've used a new feature that you hadn't used before, we could ask you about the experience there, which means that we're tagging specific events and then being hyper-focused and hyper-personalized when we ask for feedback around those particulars. And we're not just asking for a 1 to 5 rating scale. We're going and actually asking a deeper follow-up where the AI is doing the work of thinking about what question to ask based on what they've just said, which is much more like in the product world would be a user interview or usability testing even, where you sit with the person and hear them out and then ask a question orientated around what they've just told you. You could never do this at scale, right? You could never have thousands of conversations in an hour with your customers. And I'm not claiming that ours is exactly the same, because you can't pick up on everything, right? It's still WhatsApp and text and things, but you can pick up a lot, and you can do it at scale, and you can get voice notes from people telling you what happened, the story, the whole experience. And I think that's what's quite magical about our approach, is that you can be tracking with your customers over a period of time. And in that case, if we are benchmarking the month-on-month changes, and we're working with our companies to understand their customers, then that does look like a recurring model where we're built into their feedback journey and in their customer understanding process.
How do you like ensure that like the IP, your IP, like it's, it stands out? Because I mean, if you're building on a platform like, like your WhatsApp, there's nothing stopping, like a competitor from just like having a look at the features that you guys have and kind of like trying to replicate that. How do you think of the IP when like trying to build over another platform?
Yeah, I think it's a big question in every arena within B2B software right now. So we have a few interesting plays. At this current moment, we are the only company doing what we're doing, which is unique, right? To be that distinguished and differentiated with your software, it's actually highly unusual to be this distinguished. So we don't expect to be like this forever. But right now, we're going to do it extremely well and know that that's going to be enough of a moat for a year or two. Compounding out of that, we know that we're helping companies get data on their customers. We're helping them also bring their own transactional data that they have on their customers into our platform and portal, and then build intelligence on top of that. So we are inevitably building sort of a data intelligence layer and access to the raw data that is actually not something that a company wants to jump out of, because now this portal, this interface where you in Yazi can access all of the intelligence that your customers have given you over periods of time, that becomes something you don't want to lose out to by just jumping onto another platform. So I think as we look at like even digital twins and synthetic data on top of it and building personas, there's lots of interesting things that we'll be able to do on the back of the raw data that will compound in time with value. And then quite uniquely, we are building the panel, the database. We're building it more and more. And we often help our own customers. We help our other customers understand the customers of our other clients if the clients agree to it. And so we end up building this network of participants where we can basically allow for different companies to get feedback from other people groups. Obviously, if we've got the right agreements in place with the different clients. And so in that case, we are also building quite an interesting network of people across the world, where we've given the software on the one hand and then using it to build the asset on the other hand. And then obviously helping our clients make more money on it by letting us rent those people for that particular project. So I think where that goes is another whole interesting story. But right now, all we need to do is just execute on the product really well and make sure that we are gathering and ingesting all the data that we can, so that we can start to build this intelligence layer on top.
I want to speak now on the role that AI is playing in what you guys are building. I mean, the role of the AI in kind of like driving or growing, like quantitative research is quite clear. But how do you think of it when it comes to qualitative research?
Yeah, so in terms of this particular AI moderated interview product, the basis for the questions to be asked is in the research brief that you as the researcher give it in the platform. And it's a brief, there's a text field for the brief, but there's a lot of different specifications where you can be very specific about how the AI goes and asks questions. So I think a big question researchers will always have is, how do I know what questions it's going to ask? And then how do I control that? And how do I make sure it's consistent? And we've got a lot of controls in the platform that allow you to see and control that. We also have a more recent feature, which is a simulator. So you can actually create artificial respondents in the platform, which will take on the audience description that you've specified and then respond as that person or those people, which then allows you to see exactly how the AI will respond. So we give a lot of control and precedent and example in the platform as to how that works. In general, though, the space is always going to be getting better and better. So we probably see that in a few months' time, we will launch a phone-based interviewer, which will conduct the interview entirely audibly on WhatsApp, on a WhatsApp call, where the participant can elect which time they would like to do it. And as the latency gets lower and lower, as these generative voice models get faster and more speedy and more intelligent, and the sort of data flows become more efficient, we will see that as actually as a really effective way for brands to have lots of voice-based conversations with customers at once. But right now, the voice note is a fantastic solution for that, in that people can be walking on the side of the road, on in the taxi, in the car, they can be in a queue and be responding to a survey question or an interview question where they can be sharing their whole life and background in a voice note. And we then pick up all of those sound environment factors and attributes, and then can actually give a very real depiction of the kind of person that they are, based on also all of those noise factors. So yeah, I think AI is very interesting everywhere, and in a research capacity, it's definitely additive and helpful to be able to reach people that you otherwise wouldn't have been able to reach. So from a feasibility point of view, there's a lot of unlock there. On the analysis side as well, this will continue to get bigger and better and more sophisticated. As you can imagine, we've added so many AI reporting features in the last 3 months that it feels like a completely different product. It's a very exciting time, obviously, to be building, because you can just do things you could never have thought were feasible before. So we classify and tag every single question and answer. Even though there's thousands of unique conversations, we'll go and classify them in a very granular manner, so you can quantify exactly what's happened. We'll show you the transcript. We'll allow you to reclassify, change things, change your questions, your categories. It's very controllable. And then as of 3 weeks ago, we added a voice note reel generator, which allows you to create a quick summary of different voices that have come through. And it puts a video, as I said, video reel, combining voices from different people about a specific topic. And that means that you, as the researcher, can create custom videos around specific points of view, like create a video where people are not enjoying this brand, or are against it, or are speaking to why they left, or what they want to be when they're older. And then it will pull out all of the transcripts that relate to that question, find the audio, and then put it in a video. And I think that sort of experience, it just feels crazy that you can do it so quickly, because you really are in the room with these people that you've obviously never met, and that are somewhere across different parts of the world, that have now responded in voice notes and are now appearing on the screen, and you're listening to them in different languages.
It appears to me that you guys are shipping at like anthropic speed, eh?
I think everyone likes to think they are. I will say that, as a tip to any other teams, that the big unlock for us has been building a review process in GitHub, but also with different agents. So we have a Mac Mini that reviews all the PRs that come through, and it's a very sophisticated review process that actually consumes a lot of our tokens, or of the Claude accounts that we use. So we've now had to switch up to more Claude accounts as of yesterday, because it was being chowed up so quickly. But because we've now got this review process so good, it means that we don't have rubbish coming through. And so the review process can take up to sort of 4 hours sometimes. In fact, like last night, there was a particular feature that, the agent says it's done, and then 4 hours later it only gets pushed through, because the review agents took so long to assess the quality of it. So I think that's a major unlock that you can do as a team, is make sure that your review process is exceptional and is able to be scaled, because now we don't have to rely on other developers to review code.
I want to speak now on like the fact that I think it's more than half of your revenue that comes from like outside Mzansi. What have you learned about, like your B2B sales outside of like South Africa?
Yeah, so a lot of it's come through through online. So we have quite a high portion of our inbound leads coming from Claude and ChatGPT. In fact, this week I've had 3 meetings where the source of the recommendation was Claude. And that's fantastic and amazing. And I'd recommend other founders articulate what they do very explicitly on the internet, on their blog pages and things, and in different places, so that it's very clear that if someone searches for using your solution in a particular manner, that you've at least written about it so that AI will be able to recommend you for that particular instance. So the insight there is to think about the use cases and the ways that customers use your product, and then write about that so that it's clear. We obviously are very niche. So if you search for WhatsApp-based research tool or WhatsApp-based survey tool, AI interview, diary study, there's a lot of research words where if you put WhatsApp and the research word together, we'll come up within the top 5 tools. And that's been intentional. We've written specifically about those tools. We've also done lots of comparative breakdowns of us versus another company, which means that if you search for a competitor, like alternative to competitor, we should come up. And I think that's a great strategy for a local team to do to get global audience without having to, say, set up a whole international sales team. Another big drive of growth is LinkedIn. This is probably more local, and our audience as a company is definitely more African, but we are starting to bridge into the rest of the world. And I've been working on doing posts that are more orientated towards the buyer and towards getting both the local audience and the international audience to engage. So content that works both locally and internationally. So you have your local audience support it and push it, and then the international audience catches on, and then you can grow into those markets. And LinkedIn, whatever you say about it, if you're a small business selling business to business, there's still a lot of companies and people on there that buy. So if your base is low, you're going to be able to triple your business quite quickly if you do that well. And that's been a big driver for us.
Are you kind of trying to expand within the African continent?
In terms of the team, unlikely for now, but we have clients in Kenya, Nigeria, and we've done projects in, I think, 14 countries in Africa in the last 6 months. So we do lots of work everywhere that has WhatsApp in Africa. So that's Southern Africa, Eastern Africa, West as well. There are a few markets that don't use WhatsApp as much, like Algeria, I think is one of the examples. But everywhere we're pretty sorted. And in fact, I think Somalia as well is another market where they use another messaging app. So we're positioned already. The one unfortunate thing, and this is probably going to be an African audience, so it's helpful to hear also the other side, the business owner side of it. And so I'm not critiquing or complaining, but the reality is that our African clients that we've had from Kenya and Nigeria, they can never afford to pay what the other international clients can, and so we actually always discount by a huge volume or huge number, and that's okay. And we actually have specific pricing for Nigeria and Kenya, which is lower than everywhere else. But it does mean that we're not as attracted to moving into those markets because we have to grow as a business and we have to build a team and things. And as startups, future is never certain, and it is not. I don't think it is wise to be doing philanthropy and growing a VC-backed business really at the early stages. I think there's ways of doing meaningful work and make an impact. And we do believe that what we're doing is really uncovering voices that were otherwise really hard to reach and hard to hear. So I think what we see Yazi as is a tool that hopefully is better for the world and better for helping companies understand people groups that were otherwise hard to understand. And we want it to be used by everyone, and we want it to be used by NGOs and social worker teams that want to understand different communities. But we have to make it to 2027, and we have to push. And so these are the dynamics where the currency is such a big factor in how you grow and how you survive and succeed. So we obviously love Africa, and we think that the work that we do there in countries like Uganda and stuff, it's absolutely fascinating and so fun and so different. I must say, there's so many dynamics that you wouldn't expect, particularly around gender. I'd say that's an easy one to mention. Is the ease of reaching women in South Africa to do research is very easy. In fact, you'd normally see in a sample of 1,000 survey responses that 65% of them would be female in South Africa. And in other markets like Uganda particularly, or even Nigeria, you'll find it much harder to reach women and get them to respond in a survey. And there's probably cultural dynamics that might explain that. But whatever we do in South Africa is definitely not going to always work in those countries. So we have to often adapt and weave and think through our approach in quite novel and solutionist ways for these different markets.
As we close off our conversation, right, if there's one thing that you have learned about like trying to sell to like the enterprises as a startup, what's that one thing?
Yeah, that's a good point. I think there's levels. So if you're at early stages, zero revenue, zero anything, you need to actually often create the demand. You need to do something that makes you stand out, that makes a team think, guys, if you think of that boardroom conversation where the conversation goes, guys, we could be the dinosaurs that go Kodak. These young kids, they're doing this thing that is unbelievable. It's never been done before. I've seen them on this and that. They were on LinkedIn. I saw.
Well, what's that one thing? Is it like a report or like something?
I'm telling you about marketing and optics, and that's so the insight on the back of that would be, you don't necessarily try and knock on the door as much as you do create the anticipation or that feeling that this young team is going to help us do something that could never have been done before. And the big thing is often not to help them grow revenue, it's to help them not die. And if you look at a lot of the sales studies that have come out, most of them will conclude that the biggest reason that enterprises buy is to not lose money, as opposed to wanting to earn more. So it's often a more defensive buy, because the buyer is not necessarily going to get a bonus for adopting a new software, but they are definitely not going to get a bonus if things go badly. And so the defensive buy is often the way that will actually be more compelling to say, look, this could be what happens to you if you don't take action now. And if you say that and you're compelling and you present yourself as the solution in a sort of 2026 manner where it's clear that AI is ripping through everything and you've got yourself positioned as a solution to this new disruption, perhaps you've got a good shot at it. I think obviously once you get more credibility, then those logos become very important, and you need to be weaving those conversations into your conversation with the different buyers. So you're speaking about the competitor you're speaking to, and you're speaking about this work that you've done there, and you're really trying to just push up the feeling that you're in demand, and you're putting those logos very clearly in case studies and things. And then you've got to be credible. You've got to do security properly, and you've got to make sure that you present yourself as a company that can be trusted and that is reliable, and that has the data centers not in the US, for example. You've got to have a good tech stack. You're going to have to go through that onboarding process, and if you have got a tech stack that ends up doing a lot of the processing in the US, you're probably not going to make it. So you have to think about that earlier, ideally. And those are helpful tools and tips that will hopefully help you close and convert.
Closing question: how does the roadmap look like for you guys over the next, say, 3 to 5 years?
Yeah, it looks exciting. I think the voice-based calling is a very interesting one that could become a huge part of our business. We do a lot of deep integration work as well with different companies. So I think we'll see where that goes and how sophisticated we go with certain companies and building in intelligence for them and on top of their data stack. But ultimately, it's actually about executing now. It's about really dialing in to make the product experience exceptional, and then doing the growth activities that we know convert and work. And if we get that right over the next 2 years, I think we're going to grow a lot higher and more than we expect to. But we just need to be consistent, and we need to just do it well every time. We can't take our eyes off. And that's often the challenge is just to execute on the plan and the strategy, and not to get derailed or lose focus. So 5 years time, we'll see. I think we'll have hopefully built a category defining business, in the sense that WhatsApp research will be hopefully they'll be able to reference like Yazi if they speak about that. You say, oh, I was doing WhatsApp research. Oh, you mean like Yazi does here? I think that would be very heartwarming. But let's see where it goes. Yeah, hopefully we do something good for everyone.
Tim, I think it's great work that you guys have been able to do over the last few years. I think it's this is just like the beginning of like a great journey ahead of you guys, and I wish you guys all the best.
Thank you so much. Lovely to meet you, and have a great rest of the day.
All right, cheers, man. Bye.